So, greetings, my family. We know we are speaking from the UK, from Philadelphia, from New York, from Jamaica, directly into Sierra Leone. It is a global conversation about why are teenagers dying of breast cancer in Sierra Leone, West Africa. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Marlene Ellis. I'm not a medical doctor, but I was called onto this path in 2017 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer myself. I made a promise to the ancestors that if I'm allowed to survive, I would give back. So my part of giving back has been to create Black Breast Cancer. I'll introduce you to that shortly. But I'd like to first just call the ancestors into our webinar. I'm very grateful to Sister Zane, who's going to be joining us today, a Sierra Leonean nurse, who pointed out the history between Jamaica and Sierra Leone. That when the British tried to rid us of the Maroons, they were first sent to Nova Scotia. And then they arrived in Sierra Leone. Since the 1800s, Sierra Leone has been taking care of some of our greatest warriors. So we are already united and combined in our ancestral divinity. So that it should be no coincidence that I met Cremelda. I of Jamaican parentage should have the honor of Cremelda contacting me to say, let's do something because we found a mutual friend in common. It is really a privilege for me to be speaking to Sierra Leone and that we continue this development of solidarity of people with African heritage, especially through breast cancer. If breast cancer represents our ability to feed life, then it is the source of our survival and growth and unity. So it really is an honor for me to be hosting this webinar today, to be with such really impressive speakers. Every single speaker has lived with their passion and commitment and joy and hard work for what they believe in and the love of their people. So I'd like to start off by telling you a little bit about. I won't spend long because it's not what you're here for. But I'd like to first of all introduce you to Black Breast Cancer. This is a website, a free resource for anybody, people of African heritage and more, who are really like me. When I was diagnosed, I didn't know where to go. I actually, even though I lived in a Black community, realized that we were actually quite silent about having breast cancer. There was a kind of a shame. I only knew only one sister that led me through it. So this represented what I wanted to know. I wanted to know what other people were doing. What decisions should I make? So the strength of this website is really this part here. I've collected every single book written by an African heritage person and more. And now I have 86 here, so that you don't have to go anywhere. You just have to look through. There are Black writers, white writers, every single Black writer that's ever written anything about breast cancer, I hope is here. And if you think there are more to add, please just let me know. We're on 86 and I will add it, so that it's a one-stop shop. There are movies. I was amazed how many movies and documentaries our own family have created for us as the legacy should we end up diagnosed with breast cancer. So that every single movie or documentary of African heritage is on this list and more. There are tremendous things to learn. I remember when I was diagnosed, I didn't feel like reading. Sometimes a film, a documentary was better. Anything about health, natural health, and anything to do with breast cancer. There are podcasts. That's the most popular media, recent popularity. Black people podcasting about breast cancer. And finally, there are these testimonials. Look, there are 30 brothers of African heritage from the global African family who have had the courage to go on YouTube and say, my name is such and I have breast cancer. And that's quite a huge thing for many of our brothers. They are still quite isolated. So that sharing is really important. And then we have over 100 women from all over the world that have been bold enough to share their experience. And I'll just give you one example that's fitting for this occasion.
3 years ago, I detected a lump in my breast, and it was a very scary time for me. And so I was assessed by the nurse then. A couple of weeks later, the result came back. It says that my lump is malignant, and that was when I was shocked. I was scared. I was in fact in denial. My entire family was worried and really sad about the news, but Thinking Peak was there for me. The staff there, the nurses, they've been so supportive and helpful. They've counseled me. They educated me about the disease and let me know a whole lot what is to expect.
So with that, I'd like to introduce you to my first guest, Cremelda Parkinson-Pratt. Cremelda, the founder and the CEO of the Thinking Pink Breast Cancer Foundation in Sierra Leone. She's also a nurse and she holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management. She's a board member of Sierra Leone Cancer Society. Thinking Pink Breast Cancer Foundation was born on the 30th of November 2007 in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Mrs. Cremelda Parkinson-Pratt has a clear vision after deep soul searching and losing her dearest friend and in-law to breast cancer. For her, it's awareness, awareness, awareness. She's a full member of the Union for International Cancer Control. Thinking Pink was part of World Cancer Leaders Summit in Kazakhstan in 2019. Their mission is about the importance of early detection. Early life is precious. She says it is also about the importance of raising awareness about breast cancer on a national level, which is vital, taking illiteracy levels into account. Raising awareness in rural areas, marketplaces, deprived communities, schools, colleges, universities, and corporate sensitization is also essential to her mission. So with that, I give you Cremelda to start off this important discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Marlin. Thank you. I appreciate. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for such a warm introduction. I'm sorry having challenges with the internet. It's just about the location, geography. Thank you. You have heard, my name is Cremelda Parkinson-Pratt, and I am the CEO and the founder of Thinking Pink Breast Cancer Foundation. This is a foundation that it was launched on we are so grateful for this honor. It is one with distinction because for some time now we've been calling on everyone so that we can raise this awareness and a call to action about the state of affairs about breast cancer in Sierra Leone. My friend Yim Kumson introduced me to Dr. Marlon. It was such a good timing because we wanted this kind of friendship, relationship, partnership going forward because of our data, which is alarming. Sierra Leone and Jamaica, of course, have a very good relationship. When we think back about slave trade. And so some went and some came back. And that's why we have some of our lingos that are the same. I just thank you for this day. Cancer is a very important disease that everyone should pay attention to. In a little while, I'd like to share screen so that the participants, the guests, the invitees will see what we have been fighting, what we are talking about, and where we want to go. Where would we want to go for a little taste is it'll be nice for Celine to have a well-equipped cancer unit in country. The question might be why? Because in the event of any abnormality, Sierra have to travel all the way to Accra, Ghana, or India. I'd like to share our screen so that we can see the guest invitees will see our work and all that we have been trying to achieve when it comes to cancer. It's a national NGO with a mission to raise awareness about breast cancer, prevention, counseling, and to source funds to support challenge and options. When we first raised awareness through a health fair and the rebranding of Thinking Pink, because in 2008, that's the time we launched. We launched and we had 278 service users, participants who came forward with some form of breast abnormality. 47 of those had some form of breast abnormality. In that regard, we contacted our national doctors to share this alarming statistics. And they told us and asked us, this is time for action. Please, we need you to start raising awareness. And that's how Thinking Pink was birthed. And then 2013, we had our first marathon. Why marathon is simply because of the importance of physical activity when it comes to breast cancer awareness. We also held our Thanksgiving on that same year. In 2014, we had a pink gala. This is all in the aim to raise awareness and raise the most needed funds to carry on with our work. We also held a survivors forum, which is to bring all the survivors together for their own strength. Each one reach someone. What you're going through is what the same person is going through. It's about the diagnostics. It's about saying you have been diagnosed with breast cancer. And so we like to have the survivors under one roof, have a forum, and then they all share their experiences. 2015, we held the second marathon. That's during the time of our Ebola. And then we went into 2016 when we had a candlelight vigil, marathon, and a Pink Valentine fundraising. In 2017, I was invited to Abidjan, to the WAHO, West African Health Organization, for member states, and I was approved by my government to attend. And then in 2018, we had our 5th marathon. The marathon is important to us because it's one of our biggest events, and it sees about 1,000+ people who come forward to support a laudable cause and help us buy T-shirts and materials, which in turn helps us to support patients who have already been diagnosed. 2019, we had a marathon. 2020 was a pink gala, which was huge. And in 2021, on International Women's Day, we had free breast screening, which was sponsored by Sierra Leone. 2021, we had our pink party. And in 2022, we held a press conference in commemoration of International Women's Day, and we launched a spa. The spa is specifically for cancer patients when they're going through their deepest days after mastectomy. We just want them to come in here and be pampered in our spa. Our services offered a clinical breast screening, breast cancer awareness, wound dressing, national advice for breast cancer patients, chemotherapy orientation, cancer individual and group counseling, the spa, and we source funds to support financially challenged women. Where is Sierra Leone? Because some of you, this is the first time you're hearing about Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a country in West Africa on the Atlantic Ocean. It is bordered on the north and east by Guinea and on the south by Liberia. Population is approximately 8 million. Youth population is 78%. It is a country that has more youth, and that is the age between 15 and 35. Sierra Leone is divided into provinces, districts, chiefdoms. The country has 3 rural provinces plus a capital city and administrative province. There are 14 districts, 12 rural and 2 for the capital city. The cancer incidence in Sierra Leone is why we are all here today. The kind of profile of in ARC Global Can, you will see that. Based on the report, it's clear that 3% of all mortality cancer related to cancer case, to burden of cases related to cancer, and it's expected to rise significantly in the coming years if not addressed. The registry, that's the Cancer Registry of Sierra Leone, collects information from 18 health facilities in Western area in Freetown, which creates limitation in information on prevalence and incidence data on cancer in country, because we focus only in the Freetown Western area. The report in IARC Global Can 2020 estimated approximately 4,708 cancer cases, in which 1,836 are men, 2,876 women, and 3,389 cancer deaths. 1,389 men, 2,000 women. Women are clearly more affected because of the hard burden of breast cancer. 985 new cases, which ranks first, followed by cervical and liver. The high mortality to incidence ratios for several cancer sites in both men and women suggest low cancer survival patterns in Sierra Leone. This is due to difficulties in accessing healthcare facilities, low economic and educational levels, and inadequate number of cancer-related health professionals in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit us, because for your attention, we'll be sharing some of our graphic slides. It's only but correct to share the truth and nothing but the truth. We are speaking about teenagers. These are the teenagers that were screened during our cancer sensitization. These are more. We find out that there are lots of teenagers come up with lumps, some in advanced stages, some in malignant cases. What we do, we raise funds for them, contact our doctors, and we try to, whatever the diagnosis, we remove the lump, we take them through the lab for histopathology, which gives us the result to know how to create a treatment pathway. These are all highlights of patients, and these are all young teenagers, young patients that do access our organization. This is a 19-year-old girl. She had her first mastectomy, and there was a recurrence, as you can see, from the breast. She's 19, and we had to, she accessed our foundation. We accepted her. We raised funds for her. She had another mastectomy. She went through chemotherapy, and we are just paying attention to her, asking her to come forward in the event of any abnormality, any further abnormality. This is another 14-year-old girl. Sadly, she has passed away, and she suffered with such mass. She first found out from a lump when she was 12. She's a school-going girl, but according to her, she was bitten by an ant. She was under this tree, and an ant came down and bit her. And as a result, this is what she ended up with. She lost the breast, and she lost her life. She suffered. And we were really sympathetic towards her case because she was an orphan and she wasn't sure about what breast cancer is all about. Some of our events are in schools. We try to catch them early. We go to schools as young as kindergarten, just for them to have an idea about what breast cancer is, because children are very good at information sharing. And this is why we concentrate a lot in schools. As you can see, these are junior high schools, senior high schools. We go there. We raise the awareness. We teach them how to conduct their own self-breast examination. We educate them about signs and symptoms. We tell them at the onset of any abnormality, please come to our foundation for further diagnosis. We keep going to the schools. We cannot leave the schools behind, because out of these children are where we have found the most pathetic and advanced stages. We also go to the provinces. We don't only stay in Freetown at our comfort zone. We take it to the districts, because they are the ones who need us even the most, because of the lack of awareness, the lack of education, the lack of knowledge. Some in school are telling you that the nurse finds a lump and she'll say, no, please don't touch it, because grandma will when I get home, my grandma is going to pound it with a wooden spoon. It's only a breast seed. So it takes a lot of counseling, a lot of education to bring them to reality that not all of us, but please check every lump. These are all schools. We concentrate more in schools. We go to marketplaces too. We go to corporate offices too, but our attention stays at school. This is up the provinces. This is also up the province, which we did. We picked that up last year after the case of the young lady, Adama, who had this mass, and we decided at their point of need, because most of them don't even have registration fees. So we have to go and offer them free screening. this is also of the provinces. We pay a lot of attention of the provinces, like we said. We spoke about our sponsored work, our marathon, our cycling race. We include the schools as well. We get them in, we make it one happy family fun day, because everyone has the awareness raising. We will now go to our data, which is the most important thing. This is our data. 2008, there was 278 participants. This is what we can see. You will notice that in 2015, because of Ebola, there was a drop. Then thereafter, we started picking up. There was also a drop in 2017, but 18 and 19, 20, and 2021, because of the intensity of the awareness raising, we are going places and people are coming forward. We are in the media. We are everywhere. We're doing social mobilization campaigns just so that everyone is aware. So this kind of diagnosis, it catches a lot of attention. Now, this is the age range that Dr. Marlin herself is very interested in. It's about the teenagers, 0 to 19. It's about 20 to 29, even 30 to 39. Hence the belief that breast cancer is for the older population. It's not showing in this data. Matter of fact, it's telling us the opposite. And so that's why we appreciate this conversation today, this global conversation. It's necessary. It's worthy of the international attention. Once again, I thank you. And there we go. This is about the data from the secondary schools. These are the schools we visited in the provinces and in Freetown, 0 to 19. You find out that the schools, we should pay attention to them, because they are the ones that are the leaders of tomorrow. And then now I'll take you to a fun part, which is our marathon. Maybe somebody will be interested to come and join the race and help us raise the awareness and raise funds for a financially challenged woman. This is how we do it. We run half marathon. We do 20 km. We do 10, we do 5, all so that everyone, young, old, school, everyone is included. It's an inclusive race. It's huge. We love it. We enjoy it, because after all the hard work in October, then we treat ourselves to this marathon. And at the end of the race, we always have a health fair where we do breast exam, we check for diabetes, hypertension, and we do the Pink Friday, like I just said, for hypertension, we check the breast, malaria, and eye exam, and just so that we have a healthy nation. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, because this is the end of the slides. I hope you all have seen in Sierra Leone what goes on, how we manage it. And so I take this opportunity to say thank you for your kind attention. Thank you so very much.
Dr. Cremelda, I feel like calling you Dr. Cremelda after that presentation. Now, I didn't know what kind of presentation you were going to give, but you've really exceeded my expectations. I really thank you very, very much. And I also thank you for your commitment, because it just feels like I'm British born, of Jamaican parentage, currently in Philadelphia, but I feel the gratitude for the work that you're doing in Sierra Leone as if those children were mine. It's you covered so much, and I really appreciate it. And I've got 100 questions. And normally, I would say to people, "We'll ask questions at the end." But I do think because you covered so much, and because it's such an emotive uh, conversation, you've raised so many important points. I would just like to check in. People are still coming in.
Yes.
Um, we're on now 23, and I'm really glad people are coming in. They're just currently joining.
Wow.
Are there any
Yeah.
questions? Just a couple of questions before we move on to the next speaker. Does anybody have any burning questions like to ask Cremelda? Alison, hi. Alison is from the UK, the Midlands, UK. Hello, Alison.
Hello,
Hi.
Alison.
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good afternoon.
So my question was, when I went to Abu Dhabi in 2010, I spoke to the Johns Hopkins University, and they said the average age for breast cancer was 17 out there, and they explained it was because they have a very small gene pool. They don't really make children outside of their demographic, should I say. I'm just wondering if that could be the same thing in Sierra Leone, where the gene pool is quite small, if that could be part of the issue. I mean, I heard about the 12-year-old girl, but could it be anything linked to gene pool?
You see, the thing is, because we lack research, and that's one thing we want to go into, because why so young? The other day, another doctor was saying, maybe these kids jump on their own accord to start contraceptives without going through the right channels. So is that true a possibility? These are the things we're trying to grasp, to see it's as young as 7. There was a 7-year-old girl who had a mastectomy. They had to take off the growth, at that age. And so it's something we want to pay attention to a lot.
Thank you, Cremelda. Does that answer your question, Alison?
It does, because the girls in Sierra Leone are younger than the ones that I was aware of in Abu Dhabi, a lot younger. So with regards to contraception, girls in England take contraception quite early as well, but we don't see it happening.
Yeah, it seems to me, I mean, I think, whatever's happening into Sierra Leone could be a real indication of what's coming into the world, getting younger and younger. I think that pattern that you showed us, Cremelda, is a global pattern for African women, at least. There's a constant thing in England that they're getting younger. The most aggressive breast cancers are with younger Black women. I've got a question from HM. Is there any link to vaccines or medication and what's happening? Okay, I think we've...
No, not that I'm aware of. Like I said, we are trying to go into research, and with research, we'll try to find out a lot more, because all we've been doing is just diagnosing. Now we want to see why this age bracket, why the data, why is it affecting them as opposed to the other side, which we all believe that it's, women in their menopause and older that are going to be affected by breast cancer.
Yeah, thank you. I've just got one other question about the data. Showed, you talked about the men, and it looks very high. I presume when you showed us the data of the men, you weren't talking about men and breast cancer.
No, we were talking about men general cancer.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, with that, I'm going to introduce you to our next guest. Again, I remind you that we are talking across a lot of places, and we are directly into Sierra Leone. Africa is challenged by so many things. It's not as easy as in the West, so we have to be extra patient. So I'd like to tell you about Zainabou Sese Haral, otherwise known as Zain. Zain holds bachelor's and master's degrees in adult health and education. She's a graduate of North Rochelle and Lehman College's Schools of Nursing in New York. And she has 31 years experience in healthcare, with 22 of them in nursing. She's an international entrepreneur and the founder of the Sierra Leone Nurses Association. Members are from both African and American communities. She's also established herself as a popular campaigner in her communities. Her work has made her well known in both the US and Africa, at the Senate, the US Congress, and at Sierra Leone government levels. So this, we have the pleasure of listening to what Zane has to say about breast cancer and her experiences.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone viewing from all over the world. My name is Zainabu Sase Harrell. Thank you, Dr. Ellis and Cremelda and Khadija for this opportunity. This is a very serious issue for us. I just wanted to shed a little light that this foundation that Cremelda started actually serves Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. It's the only breast cancer foundation center covering those three areas. Over the years, me volunteering with them, they've been serving almost 12,000 people. I got involved with Cremelda because I found a lump myself. I'm a nurse. I was working in New York, and I had no health insurance. And so first thing I thought about was going home. So I went to Sierra Leone. I looked tooth and nail to see where could I get a mammogram or even some kind of ultrasound just to check this lump. And this lump I felt, my friend who was a pharmacist felt, I let fellow nurses feel it, and I let my mom feel it when I got to Africa to visit her. And so we found Cremelda online. And from that, I wasn't able to reach it because I was only in Sierra Leone for a real quick time just to really try to get that scan done. And there was no doctor available. I found Cremelda before I left. I was doing some herbal remedies and modalities. And praise to God, it got rid of the lump. But from then, I just built a relationship with Cremelda, found out that she is really serving more people than you can imagine. And she, I asked, how could I give back and help you guys? And she told me about a young girl named Fatu. Fatu came to Cremelda. She was a teenager. When I got to Fatu, she was just approaching her 20s. Fatu was dying from breast cancer. I paid for her mammogram, tried to get a treatment, but unfortunately, it wasn't. And so this platform is really important for everybody to get on in the diaspora, because I work in oncology. I've worked in America in oncology, and we are treated at the bottom of the totem pole. I've had oncologist physicians walk in, and if you're not affluent, and unfortunately, if you don't look a certain ethnicity or race, you don't get the service that you deserve. So I used to advocate for a lot of my patients. I collaborated with Cremelda. I think the nurses need to make some of the biggest noise in the country because we're more than the physicians there. And from then, I just started doing volunteering screening with Cremelda anytime I come. Fundraising, we started collaborating on different projects. She leads a lot of my projects, but important. We really need people to support them because, it's paying it forward. And cancer is a big, big issue, especially with people of color, especially, let's say it, Black people. It's big. So I thank you all for the opportunity to join you guys today.
Thank you. Thank you. And our next guest is called Khadija Kone. So you've heard her name. You've actually seen on the video I've shown. Khadija is a registered nurse with advanced training in oncology nursing in Sierra Leone, with over 7 years experience in nursing breast cancer patients at Thinking Pink Breast Cancer Foundation and many hospitals within the country. Khadija is also a breast cancer survivor of 7 years and counting. So, without further ado, I give you Khadija.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ellis, and everyone. Good afternoon. So my story has been one that I always love talking about or telling people about because I believe that actually I've seen that it has really motivated and moved a lot of people. It started out close to 8 years back. I was in nursing school, and I started my nursing journey there, and I had a lump, and I had no idea what it was. I just thought maybe it's a normal body development, And but then I started feeling some discomfort, pain, and I was really, really, really like shy and scared to talk about, right? Because I thought, okay, maybe everybody else is experiencing this. Maybe it's just normal, to the point that I was walking. My nursing school actually is very much like a block away from Thinking Pink, or maybe less. And so I was just passing by, and I saw this place. It's so colored with pink. I mean, the doorway is like lit with pink. And I saw the sign. It says breast cancer. The fact that it says breast, I'm like, well, let me just go there and find out what it is. I walked in. Yeah, I walked in, and I saw this nurse there. Okay, and she's also a patient lesbian, and she was so kind to me. She was so welcoming. Um, First of all, walking into a place that was so, well decorated and all, I just thought, okay, this one, they might ask me for money. And I was like a student with my own little allowances. I could not afford that. And I was worried. And so I walked in, and she was there, welcomed me. It seems as if I can tell she already knows my problem. And she was like, asking me questions, and also taking the words out of my mouth. She was like, okay, you're here because something is wrong with your breast, and you want to find out what's about. You want to find somebody to help you with it. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And then she's like, okay, no worry. We're going to get you, I'm going to look at your breast, and we're going to get you to see more, medical team to look at it. And then I'm like, how much does it cost? Because that was my issue back then. And then she's like, don't worry about it. It was a bare minimum. It was like my allowances for my lunch. And I was like, oh, okay, I can afford it. And I had the surgery, had the lump out. It was benign, thankfully. And that was when Mrs. Pratt saw me. And I remember the first thing she asked me. She was like, hello, come in. That was my second visit. She's like, come in. What are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm not sure, but I'm a student nurse, and I don't know, but I'm here. And she was like, oh, a blessing indeed. Or it was like a blessing in disguise. I remember she saying something like that. And I couldn't really understand what she mentioned. She was like, okay, so you understand a little bit about breast. At that time, I've actually been counseled and educated by the nurse patient liaison there about what breast cancer is, the breast anatomy, and what are the dangers and the normal ones and the less danger ones. And she also taught me how to do the breast self-exam. And that was one skill I so appreciate. And then right there, she was like, join us, come on board, And I said, naturally, I'm like, sure, I would like to help other people like me. And a couple of years into it, I would say 2 more years into it, and went on to my final year, I discovered another lump in my breast. It developed so fast from no lump to a lump in a space of 4 months. And that was really scary for me, And it was during the height of Ebola, and it was really difficult to attain treatment, let alone surgery. But through thinking, I was able to secure a surgeon who was able to perform the surgery free of charge, again, obviously, through the fundings and donations. And prior to that, we've been engaging in so many fundraising and so many advocations and sensitization and awareness raising in general. I remember Mrs. Pratt would just say, you know what, go and raise awareness. You're the young ones, and young relates to young, right? Go to school, go to colleges, talk to the young ones, talk to them in the language that they'll understand, or we all understand. And I would do that. And when people, my young peers, would look at me and be like, okay, she's young and she does have lungs. And that's when I started getting a lot of young girls walk up to me just after a general presentation or sensitization message. They walk up to me and was like, I actually have something in my breast. I actually have this. Oh, my sister has this in her breast, a lump in her breast, And that's how we, directed them all to come down to thinking things with God where I'm in turn engaging them in so many education with regards to disease. and help, channel or navigate to their treatment options along with the nurse in charge and Cremelda Pratt as well. So fast forward again to the year I diagnosed my breast cancer. Wow, it was the most difficult time of my life. I was young. I was just about to graduate. I was not married. I was single. I have a whole life ahead of me. And that that diagnosis can really break anyone down, irrespective of what you know or what you think you can do. It was the hardest time, but I don't want to get all emotional right now. But I thank God for thinking things. You know, they have one of the most amazing teams I can ever find at that time and up to date. They were there for me. They were counseling me. They were educating me. They were being very supportive. But me as a nurse and caring for this patient, student nurse then, and I was engaging in pretty much a lot with regards the counseling, the caring, and the education. I know really what is happening to me. But then the fear comes in of what's going to happen then. Being that Sierra Leone, the cancer treatment infrastructure is pretty much non-existent, almost, I would say. And I was so scared during that point because I know that if I delayed, I would not have a good outcome. I was so sad. I couldn't even leave my house for a week. I was so down. My family really didn't know what to do with me because they were also really sad about the news and they really didn't know what to do. Mind you, I am with a single mother and she couldn't really afford this price tag of the treatment. And at that time, my option was to have a mastectomy, dose stage 1. That broke me down even further to the point that I thought, okay, probably this is just, my life is very near to the end. But I thank God for Cremelda Parkinson-Pratt. She stepped in. She was like a mother to me, a best friend, a counselor, a consoler, a very supportive spirit. She was like, you're going to do good. You're going to do good and you're going to come back and you're going to make a change. I have to say that I wasn't really confident in what she said then, but then something in me says that maybe it could be true. What if I just took an extra step and work hard and make a change and hope that her words can come true? I felt like I had a responsibility to make her words come true, And so we engaged in intensive fundraising. Though it was one of the most difficult times. Imagine during the height of Ebola, no flights were coming in and out of the country. Hospitals, private, governments were closed to any other treatment, only but Ebola. And it was a pretty tough time, but I praise to God that thinking things had been there, and because they did not relent, they could simply just close along with other facilities, healthcare facilities, but they didn't happen. They stayed open because they know that cancer doesn't stop. Cancer will come, people will come in who need help, who need guidance. And, I was there dealing with my own diagnosis, and I was still engaging in sensitization and fundraising, which was one of the most difficult things to come by. And a lot of people get so discouraged to the point that they felt that it's a lost battle because there's no funding. And cancer, irrespective that it was a very expensive treatment, it was still quite affordable in Africa, I would say. However, still very expensive. But with thinking, I would say Cremelda Parkinson-Pratt did not relent. Her team were wonderful. They did not stop. They pushed it. They pushed for fundraising. Though doors were closed, every organization, there was no one even calling in and saying we can donate. No one was coming to our aid until I would say the very one day when we got a call from, we have approached literally over 30 organizations and institutions. I have to be honest. and only two came to our call, you know, who answered to our call. And I every day I pray to God for them, because I don't know what would have happened if they had not, you know, looked at my story, looked at me and said, you know what, let's help this little girl out. She may come back into something good, you know? I mean, they believe that I have a chance. And I every day, that is my prayer point. I pray to God for them. I pray to God for Thinking Pink Breast Cancer Foundation. It was not easy. And then, you know, it just happened really quick. And I was able to go to Ghana for my treatment. I went through a surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, another toughest time of my life. But I thank God that they are specialists. They are people, I mean, healthcare professionals who are very much inclined in the area of oncology and were there to help me out. I'm talking about nurses, the surgeon oncologists, medical oncologists, the physiotherapists, name it, they were all there, the nutritionists, they were all there guiding me, and I felt so empowered. But my story was pretty much interesting because I went there as a patient, but then I was a student. So my student spirit was still in me. I would ask all these tons of questions, which my Sierra Leonean patients would ask me, and I wouldn't have the answer. I would ask all these questions. I would learn. I would be having my chemo. I would stick around just to observe how chemo is being administered, learn about the side effects, learn literally a lot of things about the treatment, you know, including the nutrition, the physiotherapy, healthier lifestyle changes. I learned a lot, I would say. It's as if I've gone to school while all that when I was receiving my chemotherapy and radiotherapy. It was like really a long roller coaster for me. I went through a lot, but when I got back, I felt so empowered, so ready to give back, because I remember the day when I last met my oncologist, and she was like, after running numerous expensive tests, and she says, well, you're good to go home. And I was like, no, really? I mean, like, one long year, am I really going home? Are you saying that I'm fine? I can go and live my life, continue, dream, and aspire to achieve my goals? And she's like, pretty much, yes, you can do that. You came in at an early stage. And that is when I understand the power of early detection. It's so important. During the time when I was receiving my treatment, they were coming in at all late stage, and I would communicate with them. I would chat up with them and understand why they choose Ghana, why not. And they all had the same challenges that Sierra Leone is having: lack of infrastructure, lack of trained personnel in the area of oncology treatment, lack of fundings and whatnot, the struggles they have to go through. Most of them, unfortunately, did not make it, and I felt so sad. And I remember one lady, she is a late stage cancer patient. She's like, Khadija, after hearing your story, I did not have the opportunity to, be blessed with people who would have educated me, who would have been able to teach me what to look out for with regard to signs and symptoms, the causes, the risk factors, and treatment options. I was literally like ignorant. And I was only told that it's due to witchcraft, it's due to, somebody trying to bewitch me or whatnot. And so I started the traditional healers healing, and it didn't work out for me. And now I'm here told that my cancer has spread beyond, and that I could not be cured, and that I have few months to live. And she says, go back and tell them what I did not know. Go back and tell them what you've learned, what you've achieved. Tell them, educate them, continue raising awareness, and don't stop until you die. And I was like, okay, I will do that. Although I had some anxiety and pride to be leveled upon all these responsibilities, but I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to stop. And I'm not going to stop until it's the last thing I have to do. So coming back to Thinking Things, in Sierra Leone, I made a promise to everyone that I will deliver the best that I could. I would do what it takes to raise awareness because education is so important. The level of awareness is very, very important. How can you fight an enemy that you do not know? It's literally impossible. You wouldn't really know where to start. And so there was so many lacking of information and access to quality information and quality um, navigation through the treatment options. And so I worked so hard. I visited so many hospitals, schools, colleges, institutions, corporate institutions, alongside with Thinking Think Breast Cancer Foundation, continue raising more awareness, more intensified awareness. Because the sad part is that cancer doesn't wait. You know, people would say, no, I don't think cancer is in Sierra Leone. But I see this patient and I feel like it's our responsibility, me, especially as a nurse, to deliver this message and also more importantly, share my story as a survivor that cancer is not a death sentence if detected early. And we all have a responsibility towards our breast. Breast cancer is a global pandemic, really. It is indeed. When you talk about cancer, the top on the list is breast cancer, irrespective of what other cancers, all over the globe. Even small Sierra Leone, breast cancer is high ranking. And why is that? Still, people do not understand what breast cancer is. There's a lot of challenges that the foundation itself is facing due to lack of funding because all that is needed to facilitate our sensitizations and reach the people that most need it, you know? And so we're still fighting, we're still pushing. It is a very tough journey, but I thank God that we have achieved so much again, though there is still more to achieve. We've achieved so much. We've reached out over thousands of people. You can see from our data, we've reached so far. And I still feel so heartbroken when I see young girls die of breast cancer. It happened to me. I developed a relationship with them. I was close to them and trying to fight and raise funding for them to be able to travel out and get a better treatment. In that process, the cancer would advance and they would end up dying. It really hurts me so bad. Although a lot of times I don't show it, but when I go back home, I just try to sleep because I just imagine if they had had the chance like me, if they had had and given another chance to live, to fulfill your potential, your purpose, and achieve your goals more importantly, to touch more lives. That's what I believe in. I just imagine had they lived, they would have become another me, you know? And it breaks my heart. And that really fuels me to keep pushing, to keep going out there, to raise awareness, to participate, and more especially to also train myself to acquire much important skills and education to be able to deliver the accurate and more how do I put this, more beneficial knowledge onto other people to the point that I'm even recruiting other nurses to come on board because oncology, unfortunately, in Australia, it is somehow like in an infantry stages, you know, and breast examination is one, but a lot of people steer away from the diagnostics, such as the ultrasound and even the mammography. They fear that, oh, it will affect them. They may release some sort of radiation. They may still have cancer more. Just imagine hearing that. I have to debunk all of that, but it's really difficult because there's some truth to that, as in terms of mammography. It releases some amount of radiation, and I can't deny that fact, you know? And so it's really difficult trying to educate them. I mean, basically, like there's no other way, you know, they will have to go through that in order to be able to detect whatever abnormalities early, because if not, unfortunately, late staging of or late detection of breast cancer would have the inevitable result, which is death. And that is what I fear for a lot of women, though I see them every day and every day it breaks my heart. But I just hope and wish that there's some other way. In my case, personally, when I was diagnosed, I wasn't allowed a mammography because I was too young. I'm not 40, I'm not old. And So I was denied, and I was like, well, there's got to be another way. The ultrasound wasn't giving me the result, or the doctor the result that he needs. And then I was like in this state where I don't know what will happen. And the options, they were like, you know what if you just undergo a much more advanced screening, such as the CT scanning and MRI. And I didn't want that, because that is more exposing you to cancer, radiation. And that would risk me more of, becoming more from the cancer, likely. And I was really, really worried about that. And I really do pray that there's some way, some another way. And I just want to thank everyone involved in the fight of breast cancer. Thinking Pink topmost, because Thinking Pink, I would say, is championing all breast cancer sensitization, awareness, advocacy, and policy making with regard to breast cancer control. So many other institutions and surgeon doctors who would look at the rising costs and the expensive treatments and would say, you know what, I would do it at half the cost, or I would do it free of charge for these patients. All the nurses who would really take the extra step and mile to make sure that the cancer patients will receive the care that they needed, that would help them alleviate their pains and suffering and console them and be a shoulder to cry on. So many nurses out there are doing it. So many people and, individual people are doing that. And I want to say thank you to all. I cannot remember you all, but I want to say thank you very much for all those volunteers, especially at the Thinking Pink Breast Cancer Foundation, who themselves have self-cancer, who have had mothers who've died of cancer, aunties and sisters who've come to the foundations to support us, to volunteer, to do what they can to help promote and further the foundation. Because Thinking Pink is still so important. Though we're going through a lot of challenges financially, it is really heartbreaking when we have staff there, those volunteers and other staff there, and they're not paid and whatnot. It really breaks my heart a lot of times, because that means that we may risk losing them, But thank you all for sticking around. Thinking Pink is an NGO, but you all decided to give up your time, your energy, and your resources to support the worthy cause. I thank you very much. All those who have donated, who have made cancer patients' lives a little much easier, we say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It is not easy. Cancer treatment in Sierra Leone is really not up to standard. And unfortunately, we lack a lot of specialists in the area of oncology. And not only that, also a lot of treatment options too, such as radiotherapy is not in existence. At that time, when I had my diagnosis, chemotherapy was non-existent. Surgery, which mastectomy was the only option, not even a conservative type of surgery, but a straight-on mastectomy. And that was a lot of people's fear, A lot of people still go with that, thinking that, okay, when I have breast cancer, I will die. I'm not going to live long. But it's upon us, the foundation, and each and every individual to go out there and sensitize and educate the general public about the importance of early detection. Because once you know about the signs and symptoms, once you know how to properly check your breast, once you go for your regular professional healthcare examination or clinical screening, it's so paramount to be able to detect, because a lot of people, a lot of women especially, are still being diagnosed. And unfortunately, these are women who thought they would never have cancer, who thought they had no problems in their breast, at the same time being ignorant of their breast. Unfortunately, that is the reality. And it's really, really sad. Every time I think about all those who died, I felt I failed them in some way. I still feel that personal betrayal within myself, like I failed them. But at the same time, every death motivates me to try even harder, push even harder. There are times I just want to quit. There are times I'm like, it's just too much. I don't want to do this anymore. It's just overwhelming. But I felt I had responsibilities. And I have my wonderful mentor, Cremelda Parkinson-Pratt, always there, giving me the push up, cheering me on, advising me to keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Thank Khadija, you've moved a lot of people. And I thank you, because I feel the same way as you. we were allowed to survive and other people were not. And it's a very humbling place. I absolutely get you. And I thank you for your work. And on that point that Khadija told everybody, look, I don't know how Cremelda does it, but she raises thousands and thousands because raising money for breast cancer is not hundreds, it's tens of thousands. And this webinar is all free. We've all given up our time free. And it's not because we've got money. I'm self-employed. Probably we're all self-employed. We've given up our own spare time. The tickets, the entry is free for you. So please, if you have anything to give back to the Pink Thinking Foundation, and at the end, Cremelda, I hope will give her banking details for the organization, because when we're really helping each other, we really have to do this, you know. But without further ado, I'd like to move on to the next guests. I'm so proud to be introducing you to my next guest. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Andre Williams. Dr. Andre Williams is a proud Jamaican who lives and works in Jamaica. He describes himself as an integrative oncologist. As the founder CEO, he runs a clinic called Teshuva Wellness in Montego Bay. As an extensively trained conventional oncologist, Dr. Williams has received an international award from the American Society of Oncology in the work of developing a country. He did further international training in proven nutrition and wellness strategies. He believes the body was built to heal itself and employs his wealth of experience to guide you towards complete wellness. Dr. Andre is also internationally certified in both the Gerson therapy and the Gonzalez protocol. The Gerson therapy is a decades-old approach to treating cancer and other chronic illnesses using aggressive nutrition. The Gonzalez protocol was pioneered by Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, MD, and similarly employs powerful proven nutritional therapies coupled with high doses of pancreatic enzymes and safe detoxification routines. Dr. Andre is also certified in basic and advanced prolozone therapy techniques by the American Academy of Ozone Therapy. Just to get an idea of the caliber of the person that's going to talk to us now. His qualifications: he has a Bachelor of Medicine and a Bachelor of Surgery from the University of the West Indies, Mona, from 2005. He doesn't look old enough. He's twice shortlisted Jamaica Rhodes Scholarship. He's a Doctor of Medicine Hematology from the University of West Indies, Mona, 2012. In 2016, he was the recipient International Development and Educational Award from the American Society of Clinical Oncology Conquer Cancer Foundation. He's a member of the American Society of Clinical Oncology. He's a member of the European Society of Medical Oncology, and he's a member of the American Academy of Ozone Therapy. So it really is my pleasure to introduce you to an extremely busy man in Nigeria. He's works with thermography, he integrates all sorts. And I give you Andre Williams, Dr. Andre Williams.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Marlene, and good afternoon, good night, or good morning, ladies. I just want to make sure, you can hear me well. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Very well for me.
Excellent, excellent. I'm so privileged and honored to be a part of the discussion today. It's an opportunity to come around full circle with what has been a passion of mine for ages, which is to see, I don't want to sound biased, but I can be on this call, to see Black women in particular empowered to take charge of their health, specifically as it relates to the dreaded, so-called dreaded breast cancer. One of the things that Dr. Marlene may not know about me is that I actually occupied a fairly prominent position at in the public hospital system here in Jamaica. And because of my youth, I was poised to essentially be the next generation of cancer care here. But halfway through that journey, I recognized that, first of all, chemotherapy and radiation were not readily accessible because of our third world status. And they were not readily acceptable to our population, as I'm sure is the case in the countries represented here today. So it took me on a journey of finding out what other things were available in other countries. I'm so happy to hear, although the story is sad in Sierra Leone, I'm very happy to hear that there is public interest. I'm happy to hear that there is an initiative to at least shed some light on what's happening there. And I'm hoping that my presentation today will be able to add another dimension to the discussion that will be hopefully helpful to you as women and perhaps give you further fuel and ammunition to make your voices heard. So let me just pull up my little presentation here. Good. So we're going to talk a little bit about breast cancer from a slightly different perspective. And to do so, I'm going to talk a little bit about two fictitious youngsters in young Jamaica. This is an old postage stamp from years before I was born, probably. And it's just so interesting because it has always been nostalgic for me, even though I probably wasn't alive at that time. And because of the various countries represented on this call, these two young children could easily have been young children from Sierra Leone or any other African country for that matter. And so I wanted to create a little story here surrounding these two beautiful children. We're going to call one of them Marsha and one of them Johnny. All right. There is a nutrient that they both get from breastfeeding from their mothers initially, and having gotten it from their mothers and essentially been weaned, they then are dependent on their daily diets for consistent supplies of this nutrient. So we're going to assume that Marsha and Johnny both consume the exact same diet because their mummies are very close. And when one mom is gone to work, the other takes care of the children. So they essentially eat the same thing every day. They go to the same school. They eat the same snacks. So we're going to assume that at age 5, they both need roughly 5 ounces per day of this nutrient. And given our similarities in terms of our population, it's likely that they're only getting about 40% of that, or 2 ounces per day of this nutrient in their diet. So they're already at a deficit at age 5, but not too bad of a deficit. And then at about age 10, let's assume that because they have more body mass, Marsha and Johnny both need 10 ounces per day. And maybe they're eating a little bit more, so they'll each get the same 40% of what they're expected to see, which is 4 ounces per day. So something happens at about age 12, though, because all of a sudden we see a sudden surge in both their requirements. So Johnny now needs 25 ounces per day. He's probably still getting 4. But look at Marsha. She now needs 1,000 ounces per day. And these are just rough figures to try and demonstrate how aggressively the surge takes place. And she's probably still getting around the same 4 ounces per day in her diet. In fact, we're all aware that the Western diet has declined significantly in terms of nutrient supports contained in the average meal. So it's quite possible that even as she ages, at age 12, she's probably eating even worse than she did as a child. And so her actual intake of this nutrient per day could actually decline. So now that I've piqued your interest, we know that the reason that Marsha makes this change is because instead of looking like the picture on the left, at age 12 or thereabouts, she probably looks more like the picture on the right. And so I wanted Dr. Marlene kind of knows where I'm going with this, but if there's anybody else who is allowed to speak, Dr. Marlene, you could pick on somebody quickly for me and ask, what do you think is the reason for this sudden surge in the need for this nutrient?
I want to take a shot at that. I think it's estrogen.
All right. So reasonable. And to expand on that a little bit more, it's a little bit more than just estrogen, but you're in the right vein. It is the onset of puberty.
Right.
Yeah, which is what I think you were trying to say. Right?
Yes.
So now Marsha has hit puberty and a lot has changed. So let's keep you guys, let's kill the suspense by letting you know that the nutrient in question is iodine or iodine, not to be confused with iron. Many people make that mix up when I make these presentations. It's not the same. And it's a trace mineral, so it's not one of the things that you'll hear spoken about much in terms of your mineral requirements. But I happen to know this, and I will demonstrate in this presentation that it's vitally important to tackle the epidemic or the impending epidemic that we have of breast cancer. And iodine is universally required for the healthy functioning of the female organs. All right, and so we'll take a little look at this diagram here. And we're going to look at the organs that are primarily female organs. So all of these organs here are a part of the endocrine system, meaning the hormonal system that Kodja was alluding to. But we're going to speak about a few in particular. So in women, the thyroid gland, located here in the neck, the ovaries, located in the pelvis, the uterus, although not seen here. These three organs in particular are heavily dependent on iodine for their monthly functioning, as are both breasts. All right. So this is a very important point to note, because as soon as Marsha hits puberty, her body is now going to start sending signals to indicate that, hey, Marsha, although you may not culturally be aware of this, there is a strong possibility that for every month that you are, should I be admitting these people? I think so. For every month that you exist on this earth, that's a month that you could get pregnant. And we have to carefully coordinate the balance of hormones. We have to coordinate, for example, the release of the egg, the resolution of the cyst after the egg has been released. We have to coordinate the thickness of the uterine lining so that it's able to catch the fertilized egg and allow for implantation after the conception has taken place. Even though culturally these are not things that we're expecting of a 12-year-old child, these are the things that will happen at puberty. The body is going to start sending these signals all around the body. And of course, the breasts are going to be important for breastfeeding after pregnancy. And so the body just always wants to be prepared. So it runs through massive amounts of iodine every single time we have a menstrual cycle. And that's exactly what the cycle indicates there. And the iodine that is used is not recovered most of the time. And so again, Marsha and all the women that we know are dependent on replenishing those iodine reserves every single month or every single day with adequate diet. So if we're going to talk about that, then we need to figure out where on earth does iodine come from. And this picture here gives away the most important source of iodine or iodine in the modern diet, which is seaweed. And so for those of you who are interested in looking at different populations of women, you will no doubt have already realized that the Japanese population has very low rates, not just of breast cancer, but also of female organ-related cancers, ovarian and uterine as well. Anybody who is willing to check the stats randomly on Google can do so, and I'm sure about that one, so that's all right. So seaweed is vitally important because of its rich iodine stores. The problem is most of our populations, I mean, I'm not 100% sure about the countries represented on our call today, but I want to guess that seaweed is not a part of the average diet, certainly not in Jamaica, and probably not in Philadelphia where Dr. Marlene is. I guess you guys can chime in later on to let me know how prevalent is seaweed consumption in your respective countries. But the point is that most of us are not eating seaweeds. That leaves us with a dependency on the iodine absorbed into plants and absorbed into plants from the soil. So then we look at our agricultural supplies, and we recognize that in most of our countries, especially landlocked countries, the soil is over-farmed, meaning that the nutrients are not given a chance to reaccumulate after one crop is harvested. And so when you add to that the use of artificial fertilizers and pesticides and so on that further deplete the available minerals, we're looking at a diet that is largely iodine poor for the most part, and in most cases, iodine depleted completely. So this leaves us at a bit of a deficit as both men and women, although the impact is greater felt in women. So I mentioned before, it's found mostly in seaweed. It's supposed to be available from the soil, but most of us end up with insufficient amounts. Then somebody's going to say to me, what about salt? We were told that salt has iodine in it, and there was a push in the 1960s and 70s to ensure that salt was iodized in an attempt to ensure that people were getting iodine. But the salt that we consume, first of all, we're told not to eat too much salt anyway, because it's supposedly unhealthy. And then even if we were to consume salt, the truth is that most of the iodized salt only has enough iodine in it to avoid goiter. And for those of you who are not sure what goiter looks like, this is a typical picture of a woman with goiter. It's an enlarged area in the neck, which is really the thyroid crying out for more iodine. And so it continues to enlarge over time, leading to the condition that people have associated with a lack of salt intake. So here are a few signs of iodine deficiency. They may look very generic, but you'll be surprised how many of these problems are resolved in my office on a daily basis by simply placing women on iodine. So we look at poor sleep. We've come to take these things for granted for the most part, but poor sleep usually is an indicator that you're lacking iodine in a woman. Yes, we know that she's going to say, well, I'm stressed, I'm always taking care of the kids, I'm a single mother and so on. But the truth is, if you're having poor sleep, you really need to be evaluated. Not sweating. This is a cardinal symptom for me. If I ask one of the ladies in my office, one of my clients, do you sweat? And they say, I don't sweat at all. Then that's an indicator for me that she's iodine deficient until proven otherwise, because because the sweat glands, are heavily dependent on iodine to produce sweat. And in the absence of adequate supplies, the woman will eventually find that she does not sweat. And ironically, when we replace the iodine levels for her, all of a sudden she starts sweating again, which some women find to be cosmetically unattractive, but it's actually a sign that their iodine levels are back to normal. The impact of iodine on the thyroid means temperature regulation is affected. So some women will mention that they're always cold. They may complain of having cold hands and feet, or others may say to them, man, your hands are always so cold. Menstrual problems are, for obvious reasons, a side effect or a symptom or syndrome associated with iodine deficiency, and that spans the whole gamut from fibroids, which is pretty common, to dysmenorrhea, to endometriosis. The bottom line is always going to be a dysfunction of some sort in terms of your nutrient supply vis-a-vis iodine. And of course, hair loss or thinning. One of those things that I don't ignore when a woman says to me, listen, my hair is getting so thin or it's falling out, I'm going to check for iodine deficiency. So how does this all apply to what we're talking about today? Well, breast lumps are eventually going to form in a woman who has iodine deficiency. Another possibility is thyroid problems. Third is ovarian cysts, which we have somehow become accustomed to in our women. So as long as the doctor doesn't say it's polycystic ovarian syndrome, we tend to say, oh, you just have a cyst on the ovary, as it's just was something that should be comforting. I mentioned fibroids already. I've mentioned well, premenstrual syndrome is currently, it's funny, I'll share a quick story. I have a family who attends my office here in Jamaica, and it's a whole family of women. There's a mother who came to see me because she was having some thyroid problems. I found her to be iodine deficient, started her on iodine. Then she brought her two daughters, adult daughters, to see me as well. One of the daughters had PMS, and the other daughter had fibroids, and they were in their 20s. And of course, they both had iodine deficiency as well. And then she mentioned to me, hey, the mother said, my sister has some issues with fibroids, and my sister's daughter, which would be my niece, has issues with her thyroid and with fibroids. And so I wanted to highlight, therefore, that in that situation, the most likely thing that happened was that the mother and the aunt were both born to a mother who was also iodine deficient. The reason why I'm highlighting that today is because we have spent many years in the field of oncology identifying the molecular changes and genetic changes that are related to the familial inheritance, so to speak, of breast cancer. Well, what if it is that what has been passed on is iodine deficiency from generation to generation? Because every mother is going to attempt to breastfeed their child, and that's the main source of iodine to start the child off before they get into an iodine deficient world anyway. And if the mother is susceptible, then the daughter starts off behind the 8 ball, as it were, as well. And the cycle goes on and on. In contrast, I've seen where working with that family, I've been able to replace all of their iodine levels, and they have all gone on to be very successful in terms of their health. In fact, one of the daughters recently had a healthy baby boy. All right, so this next slide is going to be very important for the two previous presenters. This is a pattern of progression that the body uses when it is iodine deficient. So the first thing that the body will do is the organs that are not getting enough iodine will start to exhibit cysts. And we're quite familiar with this. We've heard about women who have fibrocystic breast disease. We've heard about ovarian cysts. We've heard about cysts in the thyroid, which manifests as goiter, as I mentioned earlier. And so we know that cysts are quite common. In fact, they show up on the kidney and liver as well in some patients. And my rule of thumb is any woman or man, for that matter, who has cysts shown on imaging is iodine deficient until proven otherwise. If there is no iodine replacement at this point, then the cysts go on to become nodules. Nodules indicating that rather than being fluid, they're now more like gelatin or jello. And this is largely what we see in the uterus in the form of fibroids, and what we see in the breast in the form of breast lumps. And then finally, if the patient still does not have adequate iodine replacement, inevitably the patient will develop cancer of one of the reproductive organs I mentioned earlier. So it's either going to be the thyroid, the breasts, the ovaries, or the uterus. And unfortunately, like clockwork, this is what happens. What I'm currently trying to figure out is how the body determines which organ it's going to spare and which organ it's going to essentially sacrifice, like the proverbial lamb. So this is a very important concept to understand for iodine deficiency, because one could understand, therefore, I mentioned in my, Dr. Marlene mentioned in my biography or introduction that I believe the body can heal itself. And so I entirely believe that with adequate iodine replacement, we can reverse the direction of this arrow and to move patients back from cancer along with other support. But certainly iodine replacement is going to be critical for reversing the direction of this arrow, cycling the patient back from cancer to nodules, then to cysts, and hopefully back to complete health. And this is one of my passions here at Teshuva Wellness. There are a few additional problems that we need to talk about before I conclude, because there are other things cycling or factoring into this iodine deficiency worldwide problem. which I think is being largely underdiagnosed and ignored. We mentioned that it's a trace mineral. We know it's required for the healthy functioning of female organs. And this is an example of how it's absorbed. You don't need to worry about all of those fancy diagrams, but this is what happens in the thyroid, because the iodine comes into the thyroid and it has to interact with all these different receptors and molecules as a part of forming thyroid hormone. Here's the problem now. For those of you who have a chemistry background, any at all, you will recall that there was this thing called a periodic table. And this was a way of kind of categorizing how different atoms would behave. And one of them is according to groups. And so we have what we call a halide group here, which I think was group 7, correct me if I'm wrong. And all of the molecules in this group tend to behave reasonably similarly. And so in this group, we have iodine. Here we also have something called bromine. We have chlorine, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and we have fluorine. All right. So that means that all of these atoms are more or less going to behave the same. So what have we been told to do for the past 2.5 years of our lives? Where's Kojo when you need him?
Kojo is there? Brother Kojo?
Yeah, man, I'm here. What have we been told to do to be safe against this COVID onslaught?
Right. And so
wear the mask.
So this picture here is showing
it wearing the mask?
Are you guys seeing the picture?
Yes, I can
see.
Yeah,
but I see the fingers.
Mm-hmm. And in the hand is?
What is that in the hand?
It's a sponge, cleaning sponge.
Cleaning. Okay.
So sanitize.
You don't know what one of those look like, Kojo?
He's fortunate. So we have been instructed repeatedly to sanitize all our surfaces. Yes. And we are using our good friend here, which is bleach, isn't it?
Yes.
And bleach is primarily chlorine, isn't it?
Yep.
So one of the things that we do here in Jamaica, I don't know what you guys do in your respective countries, is we have been told when you're preparing to clean an ear, particularly wiping, most women traditionally will pour bleach into the mop bucket until they can smell the bleach. And when they smell it, they say, okay, that's the right concentration. Although if you read the bottle, you'll notice that that was never the intended use of bleach. All right, so that's bleach. Then we have this old article that I found about Lysol. This is from so many years ago. And I wanted to just highlight, weird as it is, that this article was recommending that women actually do douches with Lysol to assure feminine cleanliness. Yes, so imagine how distressing that is to us looking back.
Yeah.
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 And then we have flour. Flour is flour until they make it into something called enriched flour. And the enriched flour is supposedly easier for the baker to handle, but because it is enriched, it's because they added something called bromine to it. And you recall that I mentioned bromine earlier as one of the things that behaves like iodine. And then finally, we are told to use fluoridated toothpaste because it's good for our teeth. Ultimately, what happens when you add all of this to what happens in Jamaica, which is that our water is chlorinated for sanitization purposes, what you have is a perfect storm for a woman who is already iodine deficient and then consumes large amounts of flour or uses a lot of bleach or drinks water directly from the tap or has access in a country that uses fluorine for their water supply, has exposure to high amounts of fluoride. What you then have is replacement of the iodine receptors. They're not getting any iodine, and now they're also getting all these other competing atoms occupying the receptors. So one of the first steps to take in this war against iodine deficiency, and ultimately the war, in my opinion, against certainly some types of breast cancer, is to reduce the intake of enriched flour to avoid exposure to bromine. reduce the intake of tap water to reduce exposure to fluorine or chlorine, sorry. And finally, if it is possible any at all, nowadays we are so marketed to that we use Lysol for everything. And I say we reservedly. We need to reduce the use of bleach and bleach products, because until you can come and see me or another doctor who is watching this phenomenon, you may very well be iodine deficient without knowing it. After we've done that now, when you're under my care or the care of someone else who understands what's going on here, the aim is to start off by flushing the residual halide deposits such as chlorine or bromine or fluorine from the body. There's a specific protocol that we use to do that. Then we go through a phase of replenishing to replenish the cofactors for iodine to ensure the body is primed to have the iodine tank refilled. And then finally, when that is completed, we reintroduce iodine to the body. Let's see what else we have here before I go to that slide. So I wanted to share quickly a couple stories about my experiences with this. I've shared one already, which was a family that came to see me when all 5 women were iodine deficient. I listened to the horrifying stories from Sierra Leone and other countries in whom the rate of first incidence of breast cancer has fallen, if I'm understanding correctly, to age 16. And unfortunately, this doesn't surprise me. I'd love to talk a little bit more to the people who are on the ground in those countries. But given my perspective on what's driving cancer in this particular case, those ages don't surprise me at all, because all you would need to get breast cancer at a young age, if we're following this paradigm, is you'd need to have a young lady who already started off iodine deficient, probably shortly after birth. Maybe mom was iodine deficient, so even with breastfeeding, she would not have had adequate supplies. She would need to live in a country where the agricultural system has aggressive farming without replenishing of the soil. And then all she would need thereafter is to be repeatedly exposed to chlorine, bromine, or fluorine in varying amounts, such that by the time she hits puberty, her iodine stores are all largely depleted, if they're present any at all. And then there's only a matter of time between that and the development of going through the cycle that I mentioned earlier, which is from cysts to nodules and ultimately to cancer. So just to tie everything in, finally, is to tell you a little bit about what we do here at Teshuva Wellness. Teshuva means to return to God or to return to your best self. And one of the things that we advertise is breast health. Dr. Marlene understands quite well that the reason why we have to call it breast health is because we do something called thermography, which is using infrared technology and heat patterns to assess the health of the breast. We have to be careful not to say that we're screening women for breast cancer, because the truth is that's not what we're doing, and the technology was not built for that purpose. However, it can give us lots of information about the health of the breast. And because there's no pain or radiation or squeezing involved, it's suitable for women of essentially all ages. So I believe, certainly in my country and probably in the countries represented on this call today, it's going to be important for us to revisit thermography as a useful tool, because as we are well aware, young women are not allowed to or encouraged to do mammograms because their breasts supposedly are not able to be evaluated by that modality. And the truth is, we know that mammograms are associated with small amounts of radiation anyway, and they're usually painful and associated with some amount of fear and trepidation. So I'm proposing, certainly to my country and beyond, that we start looking at thermography and making it a routine evaluation tool for our young women, because there's really no pain involved. Small amount of exposure to cold temperatures for a short space of time while the machine does its calibration, etc. And then we get images that, if followed serially, can give us information about the health of that woman's breast over time. And what Dr. Marlene would likely tell you if she gets a chance is that the predictive value of changes on those thermograms is one of the most reliable indicators of the subsequent development of breast cancer. So in summary, what I presented today is a paradigm through which, or a new lens through which we can evaluate our breast cancer problems that we're having in our respective countries via using iodine deficiency as a way of explaining what's happening to our young women. And then we also have an additional tool that's going to be pretty useful for making the evaluation of breast health culturally acceptable and encouraged, and something that hopefully becomes even trendy at some point via the use of thermography. I'm very passionate about this and looking forward to staying in touch with all the different stakeholders represented on this call to see how we can make a breakthrough in this particular area. I wanted to say thank you again to Dr. Ellis for inviting me to make this talk. And I'm suspecting based on the chat that there are several questions. So I'll turn back over to Dr. Marlene now. Thank you.
Dr. Andre, thank you so much for an informative, it was a beautiful, honestly, thank you so much for that presentation. And I can see you're having the same impact that in the group that you had on me. So those that need to go, by all means go. And the questions, I'll whiz through these questions very quickly. I've got Brother Kojo says, is iodine also in CMOS?
Absolutely, it is. And so that's one of the things that's becoming more culturally trendy. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but certainly here in Jamaica, I'm watching that trend where everybody's now having CMOS in their smoothies. So okay. I'm hoping that somehow that will accidentally help us.
Okay. What about moringa in relation to iodine? No.
If it has, it's only trace amounts, so not enough to do what we need to do.
Okay. Brother Codger's brought up common table salt is sodium A, and chlorine, so assuming that's no good for us. What about Himalayan rock salt?
Does
that
so interestingly, Himalayan pink salt and Celtic sea salt are both part of the Replenish program that we use here at Teshuva and beyond. The work here was pioneered by Dr. David Brownstein out of Colorado. And as we are surely aware, the Himalayan pink salt has a different constitution of minerals present than the refined table salt that we consume. And it has several of the trace minerals that we need, not for supplying iodine, but rather for cleansing the body of those old halide deposits, the chlorine, the fluorine, the bromine. So it doesn't have adequate iodine amounts either for replacement of iodine, but it helps to cleanse the body as a part of our protocol.
Okay. And what about the reoccurrence of armpit boils? This is from Zainabu Seseharel. Zain?
Armpit boils, it depends. Armpit boils, if they are, for example, what we call sebaceous cysts, then it's potential, I've already made it clear that I'm of the opinion that any cyst is iodine deficiency until proven otherwise. Okay. So armpit boils related to, for example, deodorant exposure, maybe not so much, but if they are proven to be sebaceous cysts, then you've now piqued my interest.
Okay. Brother Kojo says, how can iodine deficient be tested for? But I think you've given that answer in your presentation.
Yeah.
Let me just check. Zane does say there's a lot of people in Sierra Leone getting armpit boils.
So we just need to find out, are they truly boils or are they cysts? And if they're cysts, then...
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if this is a myth or not, but so I want to address this. Brother Codger says his daughter grew up on soya milk and serious endocrinal issues and challenges.
Yeah.
Is that a myth about soya milk? Because I think the research has changed about this.
Yeah.
Is it not good to have soya milk?
So it's tricky because one of the things that, as you've correctly identified, Dr. Marlene, there's some proponents of using soy, and there are others who say it has what we call phytoestrogens, meaning plant-based estrogens that interfere with the hormonal system. What I think is really happening is I think we're back at the same place we started, which is that soy is grown under so many varying conditions from country to country. And I think that's what we're seeing play out where, yes, you're getting soy, but what else are you getting along with it? And more importantly, are you getting adequate amounts of the nutrients that should be coming along with the soya beans? So it's now an agricultural issue all over again.
Yeah. Sister Zebby says she uses vinegar a lot to clean surfaces instead of bleach. Is that a better alternative?
It is. As a matter of fact, our office facility here at Teshuva has never been cleaned with bleach.
Okay.
For the same reason.
And then I just want to say Dr. Jones Shepherd says this presentation is unique. First time the issue of iodine and other issues regarding breast cancer is coming up for her. I've got Zane says iodine is a mineral found in foods such as seafood, dairy products, and seaweed. It is essential for regulating. Yeah, this is essentially what you're saying. Awesome presentation from Cremelda, Dr. Andre Williams. We have learned something new about iodine deficiency and breast cancer. I'm just scrolling past these fast. Midwives of Sierra Leone should embark on awareness of breast cancer for school pupils. Yes, of course, midwifery could have a useful contribution there, couldn't it, in your work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, apparently you've now got lots of clinicians and professors in Sierra Leone that have joined in to listen to you. The messages are coming in fast to you. Do you do teledoc visits? I'm in South Florida. This is from Anne Patricia.
Yeah, certainly. And the truth is, because of the nature of this iodine deficiency story, I've actually been able to help women halfway across the world because I just need to go through the different checklists. Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? Okay, you need iodine for sure.
Okay, so please, if you think, this is a great thing about the internet, go to Teshuva Wellness, find his website, book yourself an appointment. In relation to Sierra Leone, I know it produces more information and it produces more challenges. How are you going to get iodine into the diets of Sierra Leone people? Okay, Dr. Joan Shepherd says the armpit boils sometimes have to do with shaving techniques, use of shaving cream some people are allergic to, and other issues, including personal hygiene. Do you agree with that?
That's me?
Yes, sorry, Dr. Andre. I'm firing them all.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I think, I'm fascinated by what's happening. I'll say that much. And I'd love to continue the conversation to see, if we can identify, because a lot of these things are cultural, aren't they? I mean, certainly iodine deficiency is at least partly cultural from the perspective of the bleach. So I'm not quite familiar with what happens culturally in Sierra Leone for sure. But I'm open to partnering with the stakeholders on the ground there so we can, get to the root of what's happening.
Okay, so I am conscious of everybody's time. I want to return. Doctor, I'm so very grateful to you. Please go to Teshuva Wellness to get this kind of support and service around iodine deficiency. I've taken it on myself. Dr. Andre said to me, he said, before you had breast cancer, did you have any tumors? I said, no. Rather like, no. And then he mentioned fibroids, and I had fibroids about 10 years before I was diagnosed with cancer. And as a matter of fact, my fibroids have returned. So I am very conscious, I'm very grateful that as an activist in this work, I'm now being blessed with giving this information at the personal level, because I certainly will be having my iodine checked. And I've already brought some of the tablets and things. So I want to go back. I'm very grateful to you, Dr. Andre, and I really hope this whole thing, if we're going to get better as an African heritage people, we have to take these things seriously, and we have to work together and really support each other in the real practical sense, financially, trusting ourselves, acting on the information that we're given. You've had some very precious information today for free. So if you think you can go to Teshuva Wellness Clinic and book a service, book it. If you feel you can contribute to Sierra Leoneans, look, didn't we hear Cremelda say that a 7-year-old had had a mastectomy? I can't believe I heard that. I can't believe it. We desperately need to help Sierra Leone. I beg you, please. This has been for free. So push it forward, take it forward and make a contribution. All the details are on the chat, the bank details. You make a donation. It's better to actually make a monthly commitment. So you get into the habit of making a monthly commitment. Have a chat with Cremelda. Say, how best can I support you? But let's make this part of our everyday life of supporting ourselves properly in action. So with that, I would like to thank our guests. I'm extremely grateful to Cremelda for the work you are doing. And I don't know how you manage it. I'm very, very grateful to you. Is there a last word, actually, you would like to give before? Have you got a last word you'd like to give?
Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Andrew Williams. Oh, this is so uplifting. We've learned a lot. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. We appreciate this webinar. Everyone is taking something home. And for me, it's about working together. If we work together, we will achieve goals. We will reach to the zenith where we all belong. And I'm so happy to learn something new about this iodine deficiency today, because we all go to the doctors and get our thyroids checked up, and then sometimes they're telling you something. So now, you know, like me now, I want to increase on my iodine intake. Thank you, all the invitees. Thank you for taking time of your precious moment to just stop by and have a conversation with Sierra Leone, the motherland. And you're all invited. Please come home. Come and see where it all started. And then thank you, all nurses. Thank you, Khadija. As usual, she moves me whenever she speaks. We will visit the Teshuva Wellness Center. Thank you all so very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Andre. Thank you, Cremelda. Khadija, you're amazing. Zane, thank you. I know, Zane, you're trying to build up the stronger ties between Sierra Leone and Jamaica to do with your nursing association, that you're putting it at a new level. I know you're doing some very special things, Zane. I thank you all very much for taking this time, being willing to care enough to give this your time. And I hope this in itself is just an introduction. Now we finish the webinar and we start the work. Okay? So
Dr. Merlin.
Brother Kojo.
I'd just like to contribute that we do have a very special relationship with Sierra Leone, because a very special relationship, because the last transportation of African people from Jamaica was from Jamaica to Canada, and then from Canada back to Sierra Leone.
Yeah, we did. We touched on this at the beginning, actually, of the Maroons banished by the British to Nova Scotia, and then to Sierra Leone. And then Sierra Leone. Yeah, and so yes, absolutely. Our ties are already, our ancestors are already joined as one, and it's important that we just develop a stronger solidarity as we look. If we, the most important thing about breast cancer is that if we can't feed our young, that is the biggest threat to our survival. That's the biggest threat to our survival. So, you know, we have to work in solidarity.
I beg your permission. My sister just came back from Ghana, and the incidence of goiter among men and women is very noticeable. Wow. And the distressing thing about it is the diet. The diet.
I think this is this is Dr. Andre's point, that we can look after ourselves and we can survive because we eat our way, the right way, nutritional way to health. I think that's the biggest message we get out of this, and that we have a long journey ahead of us. So I thank you very much for your time, everybody. Go well, prosper, and make your contributions to the Think Pink Foundation and the Teshuva Wellness Clinic. Okay? Thank you very much.